My name is Harold Bennett, and I'm 96 years old. I've lived in Ohio my entire life. Most people think getting old means your world keeps shrinking, but mine became strangely simple and somehow stronger. Every morning I wake up expecting my body to argue with me, and every morning it surprises me by still being here. My name is Harold Bennett, and I am 96 years old. I've lived in Ohio my entire life, and for the last 11 years, I've eaten the same 4 foods every single day, something my doctors still don't quite understand. It wasn't a plan at first. There was no grand decision about health or longevity. It started after my wife Margaret passed away. We had been married for 68 years, and when she was gone, the kitchen felt too quiet to experiment in. Cooking used to be our shared language. She chopped vegetables while I complained about the news, and somehow dinner always tasted better because she was standing across from me. After she died, food lost its personality. I wasn't hungry for variety anymore. I was just hungry enough to keep going. The first thing I settled on was oatmeal. Plain oatmeal with a sliced banana. Margaret used to make it when money was tight during the early years of our marriage. Back then, I worked at a small auto repair shop, long hours, cold winters, grease under my fingernails that never quite washed out. Oatmeal was cheap, warm, dependable. Eating it again felt like shaking hands with my younger self every morning. Second food came by accident. Eggs. 2 of them scrambled slowly in a small pan. One morning I realized I didn't feel tired afterward, not the heavy kind of tired that used to follow big breakfasts. Just steady energy, nothing dramatic. At my age, steady is a miracle. Lunch became simple too. A bowl of vegetable soup. Not fancy, just carrots, celery, potatoes, sometimes beans. I make a large pot every Sunday afternoon while the radio plays old country songs. The smell fills the house the way Margaret's cooking used to, and for a few hours, loneliness softens around the edges. And dinner is salmon with steamed spinach. My doctor suggested fish years ago for my heart, and I kept eating it because it made me feel light, like my body didn't have to work so hard overnight. That's it. Oatmeal and banana, eggs, vegetable soup, salmon and spinach, every day. Birthdays, holidays, snowstorms, ordinary Tuesdays that nobody remembers but me. My doctor keeps running tests, blood work, heart scans, questions about supplements or secret habits. He once asked if I ever got bored eating the same thing. I told him boredom is a young person's problem. When you've lived long enough, consistency feels like peace. You see, I spent most of my life chasing more. More income, more comfort, more plans for the future. In my 40s, I worked overtime constantly because I thought security meant never slowing down. In my 50s, I worried about retirement numbers like they were a scoreboard. Even in my 60s, I was always planning the next improvement to the house, the next goal, the next upgrade. Margaret used to tell me, Harold, someday you'll realize enough already happened. I didn't understand her then. I thought satisfaction was something waiting ahead, just past the next achievement. After she passed, the silence forced me to notice things I had ignored for decades. Way morning light moves slowly across the kitchen table. The sound of a spoon against a bowl. The rhythm of chewing, breathing, existing without rushing toward anything. Eating the same foods every day removed decisions from my life. And without all those small choices, my mind became quieter. I started paying attention to how I felt instead of what I wanted next. My sleep improved. My walks became longer. My thoughts slowed down enough for memories to visit without hurting so much. I remembered our first apartment, barely big enough for a couch. I remembered holding my newborn son and feeling terrified I wouldn't be a good father. I remembered arguments that felt enormous at the time, but now seem smaller than dust floating in sunlight. Life, I realized, was never made of big turning points. It was built from repeated ordinary moments, just like my meals. Friends ask if the food is the reason I'm still healthy. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's what the food represents. Predictability, gratitude, a body no longer overloaded with excess, a mind no longer chasing constant stimulation. Doctors look for complicated explanations because modern life teaches us that solutions must be complex. But sometimes the body responds best when life becomes gentle again. Around age 90, I noticed something strange. I stopped fearing time. When you eat simply, live simply, and expect less excitement, each day stops competing with the next. Become companions instead of deadlines. I still miss Margaret every evening around sunset. That hasn't changed. I sit by the window with my plate of salmon, and I talk to her quietly, telling her about the birds outside or the neighbor's dog that keeps digging holes near my fence. Grief doesn't disappear, it just learns to sit beside you politely. People imagine reaching old age means discovering grand secrets. I haven't found any grand secrets. What I found instead was subtraction, removing noise, removing excess, removing the endless desire for something different tomorrow. When my grandson visited last year, he watched me eat and laughed gently. He said, "Grandpa, don't you ever want pizza or something exciting?" I told him excitement is wonderful when life is long ahead of you. But when you understand time is limited, comfort becomes more valuable than excitement. The body likes kindness, regular sleep, familiar nourishment, calm routines. We spend decades fighting our own nature, then wonder why peace feels unfamiliar. I don't know how many years I have left. At 96, every birthday feels slightly unbelievable. But I wake up without pain most mornings, walk around my garden, cook my small meals, and feel present in a way I never managed when I was younger and stronger. Maybe doctors can't explain my health because they're measuring the wrong things. They measure cholesterol, blood pressure, heart rate. I've all important, of course. But they can't measure the absence of hurry. They can't measure acceptance. If I could sit across from my younger self, I wouldn't give him diet advice. I would tell him to stop complicating happiness. I would tell him that repetition isn't failure, sometimes it's stability. I would tell him that loving the ordinary is what makes a long life feel full instead of long. Tonight I'll wash the same plate I've used for years, set out tomorrow's oatmeal, and turn off the kitchen light the way Margaret used to, with one last glance back at the room. And if you're listening to me now, maybe the lesson isn't about food at all. Maybe it's this: the things that keep us alive are often simple enough that we overlook them while searching for something extraordinary. Can one day. If you're lucky enough to grow old, you may discover that peace doesn't come from adding more to your life, but from finally being content with what quietly sustains you every single day.